Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I already know that you all are going to love today's guest and fellow entrepreneur because not only is this somebody who owns an incredible agency that does great services that helps other businesses grow, but it is so clear to me that today's guest and fellow entrepreneur, she has such a big heart, especially for businesses that are just starting out, businesses of all sizes, to be honest. It is so clear that Kelsey loves helping them. So let me introduce you to today's guest. Her name is Kelsey Hart. Kelsey is the founder and CEO of Creative Honey Badger, which is a creative and design agency. And if you guys are tuning into the video, you're going to see her branding right there. She's rocking it for today's episode, which I absolutely love. Kelsey's journey into the world of design and entrepreneurship started all the way back in high school with a simple intro to graphic design course, which ignited a passion that would shape her future. Over the past decade, she has evolved from a freelance designer to a digital marketing expert, working collectively in website development, marketing, and branding to help businesses create a powerful online presence. After years of growing her own side business and excelling in the marketing industry, Kelsey took the leap to launch her company, Creative Honey Badger, where she helps startups and small businesses establish their online presence with web design, branding, and digital strategy. I'm so excited to dive into this conversation because Kelsey is brilliant when it comes to creativity, technology, marketing. It's a really powerful intersection to be good at. So we're all going to learn a lot. I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Kelsey Hart. All right, Kelsey, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here. It's an honor.
Heck yes. Well, likewise, honestly, going into your background, it's so clear to me that you obviously do what you do for a living, but it seems to me like you really enjoy it. So I'd love for you to take us beyond the bio. Who's Kelsey? How did you start doing all these cool things?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Kelsey Hart. I'm the owner and founder of Creative Honey Badger, as Brian mentioned. But I like to refer myself as the fearless Badger in Chief. I started my journey, just as Brian mentioned, in an intro class in high school, and it just sparked so much creativity. And as I continued to grow into my entrepreneur journey, I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't really know where that was going to lead. I had so many different visions and ideas, and I tried to run with so many of them before I landed with Creative Honey Badger. And the reason I landed there was because I saw so much potential of helping other small businesses get started. So I am born and raised in Wyoming, currently in Idaho, and so outdoors is a passion of mine. My first business was centered around my passion for horses, called Creative Reins Designs, and that's where I kind of switched gears from more of the graphic design into the full marketing spectrum when I moved to Creative Honey Badger. While I love my old branding and everything, it was time to transition into a bigger picture and see how I can help serve more of those individuals that are in the same position I once was in, starting up and figuring out how to navigate all that. And I would love to see how I can bridge that gap for entrepreneurs who are kind of stuck in that same journey as I was, and kind of bridge those pieces together so they can easily navigate the startups of businesses, and they don't have to go through the hard path like I did. I take that burden off of their plate and hopefully help that ease that workload a bit. So.
Yeah, I really appreciate that overview, Kelsey, especially because you started with your own brand and you just revealed to us even your own brand's evolution along the way. And I feel like you have a really powerful vantage point there helping other businesses with their brand. And that's probably something that holds a lot of people back, is thinking they have to nail it right out of the gates. I know how much I felt that way when I started my first business, is I was convinced I had to get it right from the get-go. How much of your work is about evolution as opposed to, of course, the enemy for all of us is perfection?
That is a tough one for me. I am very much a perfectionist, so I've had to learn the hard way over the years of just get it done. I've had business coaches that I've worked with that just was like, Kelsey, stop being a perfectionist, just get the stuff out there, move forward, put the foot forward. And still one of my greatest mentors and collaborative partners I work with right now still reminds me of that on a regular basis. It's not about the perfection, and that's so true. Like, I have failed forward is what I like to refer to as, because we all experience failure in life, but being able to know what to do with that failure is going to be the key pivotal point. Is, are you going to let that failure stop you, or are you going to fail forward? And that's exactly what I did. I started with Creative Reigns, and that was more graphic design, and while I love that branding and it fit me, who I was as an individual, very well, it wasn't resonating with where I wanted to take my business. And it wasn't resonating with the specific target audience that I was looking for. So that's where I started playing around with different ideas, and that evolution of my business started transforming. And it wasn't until 2023 where Creative Honey Badger really started coming into existence, and I had a partner that I was planning on going into business with to handle more of the technical back end side of things, the infrastructure side of the websites, where Creative Honey Badger came from. Their brand was involving badgers as well. So we partnered together and built this brand. Unfortunately, that partnership did not end up coming to fruition, but I love the brand that it stood for. And that's where that vision of helping other small businesses and entrepreneur startups find that tenacity and boldness and confidence in their own brand to build it forward. So that's where Creative Honey Badger came from. And it was a lot of trial and error. It was me trying to do my graphic design business, going through digital downloads, through Etsy shops, through Shopify stores, doing e-commerce things. Like, I tried it all, like so many different avenues before I finally found where I was meant to be in that exact niche that I felt like I could really resonate with, because I walked those shoes before.
Yeah, Kelsey, it's interesting hearing you talk about your own personal insights, because a lot of people will look at your credentials and your experience and be like, oh, Kelsey's just creative. Like, it's probably easy for her to think of these things. But what I really appreciate, and it doesn't go unnoticed on my end, is you talked about the direction that you want to go in, the people that you want to serve. And really what I hear in that process is self-exploration, self-discovery, self-awareness is the real strategy behind it. It's so interesting to me that you start there with these business fundamentals, the actual strategic stuff that we so often talk about, rather than the creative work. How do those two work hand in hand? Because it's clear to me that it seems, at least, that you equally love both and that they play nicely together.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one of the things I feel like when you're working with me or with Creative Honey Badger, it is a bit of a different separation from the average web developer or marketer, is because when you're working with me, because of my robust background in all the different industries between graphic design, web development, and marketing, you're getting all three of those in one sitting. So I don't look at it just for the design component. I don't look at it just for the marketing component. I don't look at it just for the development and aesthetics. I look at the full picture, and it starts with strategy. You can't build a brand, you can't build a business or a website without strategy. That's as simple as it is. Like, you have to have the backbone of your structure in place. Think of it as a foundation of your shop. Like, if you have a brick and mortar shop, you can't have a open store without the foundation. And that's what strategy is. And so building your strategy first is like the key factor. And I tell all my clients this when I'm building their brands and helping them discover who their brand development through their brand development journey of what they want their brand to be, is their strategy behind the brand. Creative Honey Badger is not just a random brand. There was strategy that was built behind it. Same with Creative Reigns Design. When I had that brand, it was strategy behind the brand. And so you have to have those foundational pieces to move forward and have a successful business, because anybody can have a pretty logo and a pretty brand or a pretty website, but without the strategy, it's pointless.
Yeah, I want to start there then. I want to start with the website, and I'm going to use myself. We can poke fun at me throughout today's episode, because I'm sure my past experiences represent a lot of entrepreneurs' experiences, and that is, Kelsey, I started my first business in 2008. I had no idea about web design. I didn't know how to create websites. I mean, it was harder back then. There wasn't all these Squarespace themes that we have today, but I also feel like that led me down a treacherous path, because with the advent of themes. I used WordPress a lot back in 2008. And so with the advent of themes, I would pick a theme, and then Kelsey, I would simply try to make my business fit the theme. I was like, let me put my business into the template, as opposed to the other way, obviously chicken or the egg, as opposed to saying, what do I want to convey? What do I want and need to be on the website? How much of that factors into the work today? Because I would actually argue it's even more amplified today. Themes are even easier to get your hands on, a heck of a lot cheaper these days as well. All these business owners are building their own websites on Squarespace, and I think that it's a lost art what you do and what so many other web developers do, which is coming at it from the strategy perspective first. Talk to us about that chicken or the egg, because I'm sure you see a lot of people who are just trying to fit into a theme.
Yes, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's one of the main points that I talk with my clients with. I have so many clients that come to me from using these, what I like to refer to them as DIY platforms, Squarespace, Wix, all the others that are just plug and play, drag and drop kind of websites that are marketed very well for people to just, anybody can build a website in a weekend kind of a thing. And while their marketing is very on point in that regard, there's a lot more to it than most people realize. And I too, Brian, have experienced that myself, where I'm like, I'm going to try to build this business based on this theme that I bought. I'm like, oh, this is very aesthetically pleasing. I'm going to build my business around that. Guess what? It did not work. And so like, that's one of the things I like to say I failed forward from, is that mindset of fitting my business model based off of the aesthetic theme that I was working with. So as I evolved in my business and my skill set with being a web developer, I have dabbled in all the DIY platforms, and I have landed in, I primarily work in WordPress because it is so robust and you can do so much more customization with it and really refine who you are as a brand and a business in there through all the different features that WordPress offers. But what I like to stress with my clients, especially these startup businesses that see an advertisement for these DIY platforms that's more of a lower cost, entry level, get your foot in the door, while those can be really beneficial for certain people who have a little bit of a technical background or a branding background, they can make that work. But a lot of times, more often than not, I have a lot of brand new entrepreneurs that are just so overwhelmed with trying to get the startup going and not even knowing, like, okay, now I have to build a website. What do I do? Where do I start? Like, do I use Squarespace? Do I use Wix? Do I use WordPress? There's so many factors in it. And then you dive into the themes and the aesthetics part of it, and it's like, oh my gosh, where do I go? And that's where I like to bridge the gap with those clients and take that burden off of them. They shouldn't have to focus on having to figure out what themes to use, what colors palettes to choose from. That's why you hire a professional brand developer or a web developer or a marketer to help piece those together for you so you can do what you do best, which is running your business. And that's what Creative Honey Badger does. We take that burden off of our clients and who are trying to focus on building their business and growing their business, and take all that heavy burden of trying to figure out how to build their website. Because the reality is 90% of the clientele I've worked with have started with one of these templated sites and gave up. They threw their hands up and they're like, Kelsey, help me. I do not know what to do. It is just too much. And so those aesthetic themes, while they can be super beneficial and easy to use if you have some understanding, but a lot of times, more often than not, you're still going to be running into a lot of hurdles. And that's why hiring a professional web developer or brand strategist and having that strategy behind it plays a big part, because those themes don't have strategy. They are just cookie cutter templates. And that's not ideal for every business. Every business has a different model, a different direction, their different audience group. And so like, you have to make sure your website resonates with who you're talking to. If somebody just jumps on a website and it's like, if I were to go to a random website and it's not something that is of interest to me, I'm going to immediately jump off of there. There's no reason I'm going to stay on it. But if it speaks, the brand speaks to me and the website is appealing enough for me to see and want to stay and engage with, that's when I know the strategy is working, because you're speaking directly to that audience, not just to the visual effects.
Yeah, Kelsey, to the counterpoint, I'm sure a lot of people listening will be like, Kelsey, it's way cheaper to just use a theme and do all of the bad things that you and I have already talked about in today's episode. And that's something that I very much appreciate. It's a key reason why we were so excited to invite you on the show is your business Kickstarter program. I really appreciate not just that you do it, but I appreciate the intent behind it of you understanding everybody's journey because you are one of us. It's something that I say so frequently during these episodes. Talk to us about that business Kickstarter program.
Sure. So this was something that actually developed after I launched Creative Honey Badger. This was not the original direction I was going for with Creative Honey Badger, to be completely honest. But when I moved to Idaho, I was in a brand new market, brand new area, community, and I knew nobody. So like I literally had to build this business from the ground up. And when I started getting into these networking groups and meeting people, and I would have people call me, I was really starting to recognize the demographic of this area. And granted, I work with clients all over the country, but this is where I'm headquartered in. There was a great need for entrepreneurs and startups to bridge that gap. Like I said, I had so many of them calling me, and I recognized, okay, this is where the biggest need is, and how can I fix this? How can I help in this area? And so I created the Business Kickstarter program just back in January of this year to really help try to bring down the costs of hiring a professional to help build the brands and build the essential foundational pieces to their business that they can get up off the ground running without the headache of trying to figure it out on their own, but also in a cost-effective way. And so I like to, of course, cost is one of the biggest pushbacks any web developer is going to get because, let's be real, websites are not cheap. You have a lot to do. You have to pay your developer, you have to pay for hosting, you have to pay for domains and added features and plugins in some cases. It can get really expensive really quickly, but having that mindset of it's an investment for my business versus just a one-time expense or an ongoing expense if you're doing long-term SEO or other marketing strategies with it. What the Business Kickstarter package does is we have 3 different packages that help businesses where they're at, whether they only have less than $1,000 to get everything going. They get the basic fundamentals of what they need to get their business off the ground and get basic SEO, a basic website, some business card, graphic design elements, a social media audit where I'll go through and make sure their social media pages are aligning with their brand messaging that they're trying to convey, where I just give them the resources, and then there's a consulting session that's a part of that. And then I have 2 other tiers that are a little bit higher in price, just slightly bit more depending on the package. And my highest package includes a full brand development where you're getting the full concept of your brand, from brand messaging, brand development, all your variations, the brand design, and the creation. You're getting all of that plus a website, SEO, you're getting business cards, you're getting literally everything you need to jumpstart your business and kick it off the ground and kind of like that launch of your business. So I have those 3 packages that are geared to be more affordable, and in addition to not only having them being bundled, which saves more money in the long run, you also have there's an opportunity for flexible payment plans with those. So I really try to focus on making sure it's attainable for my clients, especially because I've been there. I've experienced the hardship of I really want to start a business, but I don't know how and I don't know where and I don't have the money to do it. I've got to figure it out. And that's honestly where I really built my web background, is because I wanted to build a business and had to figure it out myself. And so I want to take that burden off of those clients who don't have those resources and provide those resources for them.
Yeah, I love that perspective, Kelsey. I love the way that you've structured it because, again, you have that clear understanding of what you went through. And of course, everybody else goes through. It really takes me back to the early 2010s when Vistaprint, I grew up in the Boston area, and Vistaprint's a Boston-based company. Vistaprint was making all of these things more accessible. All of a sudden, you could have business cards printed for you. You didn't have to find a local printer. It was really cool, but it also meant shoot, I need to design business cards and I need to figure that out. And then I had my website using a WordPress theme, and that was completely different. I had no idea how to make all of these things work together. And I used to constantly say to my college friends at the time, I was like, I wish I could just have a business in a box. And this is essentially solving all of those needs. But it really reminds me of the fact that when we start out, we have no idea what we need. Do I need business cards? Do I need a website? You talk about SEO. That's obviously a core part of the strategy that goes into our website. Kelsey, from your perspective, what's that MVP, that minimum viable product for a business owner who's in the marketplace and saying, I want to grow? What do you think are the bare essentials that we should have in place in order to fuel that growth?
Well, the first and foremost thing, I've already mentioned it, is having that strategy. That is a key piece. So without the strategy, you're not going to succeed. And some people can hurdle through it and figure out strategy along the way, but the best recommendation is start with strategy. Figure out those fundamentals that you want to do and what your brand wants to portray and who you want to speak to. And then from there, especially if you're a service-based business or e-commerce business, you have to have a website. You have to have a way for somebody to come find you. And how do they do that? They find you through brand recognition. They have to know who you are first and foremost. And then the piece to keep people coming to you and keeping that traffic coming is that SEO part, that search engine optimization of how people find you. So those are the key pieces that I found are the most important pieces when you're starting a business, of figuring out your strategy, building your brand, and building your website. And then how are you getting people to your brand, how you're going to have people find you. Those are the key pieces. And if you have those key pieces in place, then you can do a far more robust marketing and strategy that will grow and like really scale your business. And I have so many connections. I have a collaborative partner that is a growth strategist, consultant, and we work very hand in hand. So once we get to that point where those businesses are ready to take that next step, then my counterpart will come in and will help with that process and really scale. And so then we can move them into that next phase of their business where they're not stuck into this startup phase that's just sometimes an endless loop where they never come out of it because they don't know what to do after that. So I give them the essentials to jumpstart, and then I provide them with the resources to move forward.
Yeah, Kelsey, I want to zoom out a little bit because hearing the more you talk about this, it really takes me back to a limiting belief that I've had for most of my entrepreneurial career. And I feel like a lot of business owners do. And that is around the creativity and the design piece. And when we talk about graphic design, let's face it, most people have zero graphic design skills. It is certainly not easy to get typography right and placement and colors. And so much goes into it that I am always in awe of incredible designers. But somewhere along the way, I realized, holy cow, for me, design equals pretty things. That's what I always associated it with. And then, of course, the more I got into it, I realized, oh, but actually the purpose of design is to convert. It's to have our marketing campaigns be more effective. But still, the prettiness, when we look at the Nikes of the world and their very stark imagery, they have such a clear look and you always know it's Nike even without seeing that famous Nike swoosh. How much of design is about that prettiness, that brand awareness versus that conversion? And of course, it's not versus. Of course, they all work together. But does pretty equal converting? Does converting equal pretty? How do you balance all of these things as a designer?
That's a really great question. And I get that question often, actually, of why is it important to have a pretty logo versus a functional logo, as I like to say is, and the approach I like to speak to it is, if you are building a brand or if I'm helping a client discover what their brand should look like, I first like, okay, does their brand speak to what they do? So for like Creative Honey Badger, for example, you can see here, I have creative right in the wording of it, but you can tell that there's a creative component in there. So you know I do something related to creativity. So if I look at a brand, I want to know what they're offering before I even know what their brand name is. Now, my branding has my name directly in it, so that's a little bit different, where some brands are like Nike, just the swoosh. And now that one is a little bit unique in that regard, as it doesn't tell you what they do, but they are so well known that they've created that identity where even their basic logo speaks volume. And that's the point of a brand, is you want to build that hype where people start to learn who you are, and they have to do that by knowing who you are to begin with. So like if I'm teaching or like helping a client figure out their brand, I'm going to first look, I'm like, okay, does your brand design speak to what you're actually doing, what you're offering? Or is it just a text that somebody's going to read and they can be like, oh yeah, that resonates because they do XYZ? Or is it something that if it's just a pretty brand that they've created like on a Canva account because it's a pre-templated thing, does it really resonate with what they're doing? And those are the key pieces, I think, when it comes to that visual appeal and aesthetics versus that functionality. That functionality piece in the terms of branding is how are those people going, is that working with your strategy and your messaging? Can people tell what you're doing beyond the pretty brand? And so I hope that answered your question, but that's kind of that breakdown that I try to assess when I'm working with brand development projects is, who are we talking to? What do we want to make sure that they know right from the get-go, so that when you're doing a brand awareness campaign, say on Facebook or Google, they start seeing that brand and they start resonating like, oh, okay, I recognize them. And then when they need that brand or your services, they're going to recognize that brand name or visual because it was attractive, but it was memorable because of the why behind it. They knew what products they offered or services they offered, so that when they actually need that service, they already know that they can go to Creative Honey Badger because they need a creative project done or they need branding done. Whereas other brands like Nike, while they are famous and they have built that through a lot of trial and error, I'm sure, they are a little bit more simplistic in their branding, which is not a bad thing, but it worked for them. So I think there is a very fine line and a balance you have to assess on an individual basis when it comes to branding with those clients and what your goal is with your message and with your business, to really figure out, do we need to push more of that creative, or do we need to push more of the messaging behind the brand and more of a simplistic design element? So there's a lot that goes into that, and that's a whole nother conversation we could get into, but I think that would be the fundamentals of answering that question.
Yeah, for sure. I bet we could do an entire episode just on that one topic, because it really is. There's so many different considerations. Kelsey, I knew that time would fly by with you here today, but I want to squeeze two last questions in. The first of which is, everyone obviously is super curious, and rightly so right now, about AI. How is AI shaping the type of work that you do, and what's your view on where it's going to better assist us all as business owners?
So when I started Creative Honey Badger, like I had heard of AI at that point. I was in software development. We had used AI for some coding resources and stuff, which it was great, but I was really intimidated by it, to be honest. And I was really apprehensive. And then as I started to really grow my business and my brand, I started relying on AI a little bit more. And now, like, I don't know what I would do without it. Like, I'll be honest, there's so many resources that it can help bridge that gap for. Like, if I'm in a pickle with a coding situation that my code is just not working, I can throw it into ChatGPT and be like, okay, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. This is what I'm running into. What am I doing wrong? Where's my code broken? And it will help bridge that gap so I can expedite, instead of spending hours and hours troubleshooting what one little piece, like maybe it was just one character in the code that was wrong that I was overlooking. ChatGPT can save me hours of time and efficiency by helping troubleshoot. It can also help on the branding side and messaging side. I really utilize it to help me with copywriting and building those brand messages to make sure that it resonates with the demographic I'm looking towards building it towards. So I think AI can be really, really powerful if you know how to use it right. And I've even started dabbling into utilizing it in my web development tools, using such certain AI features and functionalities in my web development process, beyond just checking on my code and making sure it's correct. So that is one thing, like, I've really loved learning about it. And I recently, I live in a college town, and I recently just had an opportunity to work with the students in the marketing for their final senior practicum study, and I had them do a study on how AI is going to affect SEO. And it was really insightful because we know, like, when we go to Google anymore, you see that opportunity of you don't even have to click on anything anymore. It just pops up an AI summary. And how is that going to shape the changes in the very, very near future of how people are going to find our websites, how people are going to resonate with the content on our sites? Is it something that the bots are just going to scroll and crawl? Do we need to make sure our websites are optimized now for a whole different level of SEO? Because now we have AEO and we have zero click. So there's so much to that AI is really advancing in, and it's something that I think can be very, very powerful with not only the branding and web development side of things and marketing, but as a business owner who's just starting out, learning how to find resources, putting in prompts into ChatGPT of learning, okay, what do I need to start a business? Where do I start? And kind of bridging that gap of taking all those unknown and all the resources, because there's so much out there, to consolidate that. And I think that's really beneficial. And I know it's helped me immensely with my business journey.
Yeah, I love hearing those insights. Most importantly, I love hearing the fact that you're embracing it. So many creatives are obviously wondering what's the future hold. And Kelsey, one way or another, you're going to be part of that future alongside AI. So I appreciate those insights. And this final question, it's super broad. I'm excited to see which direction you take it in. And that is, what's your best piece of advice for listeners? We covered so many topics, and beyond that, there are so many more topics we could also talk about because, like I said, you are one of us. You're a fellow entrepreneur. So with that entrepreneur's hat on, and knowing that we're being listened to by both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, what's that one piece of advice that you want to leave them with today?
Well, it's kind of a two-part, I would say, is first and foremost, don't quit. When something's not working, figure out how you can fail forward. That's what I did. And while I may not be exactly where I want to be quite yet, I am working towards moving forward to that goal. And I'm excited because I've seen the trial, I've seen the hardship that's come with that, but I've also seen so much success in all of that, in the reward, even in the failures. So I would say first and foremost, don't quit, keep failing forward. And then second of all, choose your hard. This is something that I just recently heard is, you have hard things that come into life. You have good hearts and bad hearts. And what are you going to do? Which heart are you going to pick? Is it harder to keep going, or is it harder to sit back in that 9 to 5 where you're just miserable? Is it harder to design your business model, or is it harder to just think of all the things I could be doing and wasting my time away? So pick your hard. Your hard's going to be hard no matter which direction you do, but you have the power and the choice of saying, I'm going to choose this hard today. I'm going to choose faith over fear. I'm going to choose the hard part of the faith and the hard, or versus the hard part of staying in fear when it comes to taking that leap of faith into jumping into your business. So that's kind of where I would land my wisdom and my experience of knowing when to choose your hard and not give up.
Boom. I love that advice. That is deeply profound advice that we all need to sit with individually, because you're right. It's hard. And I think that even that basic understanding and acceptance of it's hard, but choose your hard. That's a really important thing for all of us to simmer on and be super intentional about in our own journeys, because they are our uniquely own journeys. And I think that stepping into that, it fits in with branding of stepping into our uniquely ourselves aspects. It's stepping into where it is that we want to go. So I love that advice from you, Kelsey. I feel like it's so related to all the stuff we've talked about today. And I'm very excited for listeners to actually see your brand in action. Obviously, hearing us talk about it is one thing, but seeing it is an entirely different experience. So for listeners who want to go deeper into all the great work that you're doing, drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Sure thing. So creativehoney-badger.com is the best place to find Creative Honey Badger. We have all the information you could possibly need on there. We also are on all the platforms, Facebook, Instagram. Recently just launched a TikTok channel that I'm giving business advice for startups and branding, marketing, web development called, and you can find me at the Fearless Badger there.
Yes, listeners, you already know the drill. We're making it as easy as possible for you to find all of those links down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. Scroll right on down. Every platform has the show notes. You'll find them and you'll find all those links inside of there. Otherwise, Kelsey, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciated it.